Is now starting. All attendees are in listen-only mode.
Good morning, everyone, and thank you for joining the Efficient Solar Market Partners of Northern California, ESMP team, and Solar Permitting webinar sponsored by Rooftop Solar Challenge, powered by Sunshot Initiative, U.S. Department of Energy. My name is Wendy Boyle. I'm the Director of Operations with SolarTech, and I will be your organizer today. I'd like to go over just really quickly the agenda. I'll go over some housekeeping. Then we'll have introductions, the presentation. Then we'll follow on with our Q&A session, and then some announcements that we have to share with you. Just a few little housekeeping and logistic rules. All audience are in listen mode only. But if you are using your headset or your laptop to listen in, we'd appreciate it very much if you can turn off your microphones, because sometimes we do hear some background noise. If you have any questions for the moderator and or the panelists, please use the question line, and we'll be monitoring that throughout today's session. Any follow-up questions that you may have, you can send them to David McFeely at dmcfeely@solartech.org, or you can call him at his phone number that's listed on the screen. Sorry, folks, we're having just a little bit of difficulties moving forward. Now, I'd like to introduce you to your moderator, David McFeely with SolarTech, who is the Director of Grants and Industry Solutions. Good morning, David, and thank you for joining us today.
Thank you, Wendy. Good morning, and good morning to everybody online today. This is David McFeely with SolarTech. I'll be your moderator today. I'm the Director of Grants and Industry Solutions. And joining me today is Carla Den, the Director of East Bay Green Corridor, and her associate, Nabil Kazarani, the program project analyst, also with East Bay Green Corridor, to talk about the permitting works and efforts that they're doing in the East Bay to streamline permitting. But before we get started, let me go through a couple of things with regards to who SolarTech is and what this webinar is all about. So first of all, I will do some introductions here. I will talk about the Rooftop Solar Challenge that we're a part of. And then I will turn the microphone over to Carla and Nabil to talk about their work and efforts in the East Bay of the San Francisco Bay Area. And then we will wrap up with a Q&A session and some short announcements at the end, as Wendy mentioned earlier. So before we get started, let's talk a minute about who SolarTech is. If you haven't heard of us before, we are an industry trade association. We focus on 6 different initiatives, permitting being the one that we're going to talk about today, but we also look at performance issues, finance best practices, installation best practices, workforce development, and there's another one up there I can't quite see that I'm always forgetting, installation best practices. So you can see the logos there of our board of directors and the partners that we work with as we try to move forward in streamlining these business processes that bring solar to the marketplace. And why do we do this? Solar is growing, as you know. There's actually even an article in the newspaper this morning, the San Jose Mercury newspaper in our own San Francisco Bay Area, for those of you who are out of the Bay Area, about the growth and explosion in the solar industry. But that growth and explosion is hindered by soft costs and hidden costs in the process of bringing solar to the marketplace. So what you see here are some studies that have been done by NREL, looking at what the market parity will be in 2015 for solar costs overall compared to grid costs, and how do we continue to penetrate the market with solar as efficiently and cost effectively as possible, so that we can all build jobs, grow the economy, and make a little money in the process. So SolarTech looks at the overall industry from a value chain perspective of bringing a project to market, which is what you see up there at the top of the screen, all the different steps that are involved in bringing a project to market, from closing the deal all the way through to commissioning and then the O&M of maintenance and operations. all along the way there as we hand off from one entity to the next in the development and the deployment of a solar project, whether it's commercial or residential, are opportunities for inefficiencies, such as permitting, such as not being able to get cost-effective financing, such as not being able to find the right workers at the right time. So SolarTech is focused on streamlining those processes and practices, try to grow the market 3x faster than what it currently is, and to ensure that the hidden soft costs are not an impediment and a barrier to the overall cost of a solar system as the module prices and other hard costs continue to drop and plummet. Helping us get that expanded, that message in those tools and best practices that we developed on a national scale is our Solar 3.0 program, which is another grant-funded program from the Department of Energy powered by the Sunshot program. And you'll see a URL up there underneath the SolarTech logo to the upper right, and also repeated down in the lower left. We are focused on the top 100 cities across the nation in bringing this message to those cities of permitting, streamlined permitting, installer training, inspector training developed by UL and IAEI, working in conjunction with all of our partners, IREC as well, and NABCEP, to bring best practices and training to the market nationally. So stay tuned and watch that URL, solar30.org, for announcements coming in your area about upcoming roadshow events and trainings. Moving more specifically to the topic of today, which is the Rooftop Solar Challenge, which is another DOE grant that SolarTech was fortunate enough to be able to secure this year, along with 22 other communities and partners around the nation that you see up here on this national map. We are handling the Northern California area, and we are partnered with the Solar Sonoma County, the City and County of San Francisco, and East Bay Green Corridor, who is our guest speaker today, as well as Clean Coalition, to focus on financing best practices in a regional area, and as well as installation best practices and permitting and interconnection, and then deploy those nationally as appropriate. So on this slide here, which just transitioned for you, you will see my whole team. Again, myself, David McFeely, at the top of the screen there, I'm the Director of Grants and Industry Solutions and the Project Manager for SolarTech's Rooftop Challenge team, which we call the Efficient Solar Market Partners of Northern California. And you'll also see Danielle Murray of the San Francisco Department of Environment, one of our proud partners, Allison Healy of Solar Sonoma County, Carla Dim, which will be speaking shortly, and Ted Coe of the Clean Coalition, focusing on interconnection. And then more specifically, again, what we're focused on with our deployment of what we're calling the Efficient Solar Market Partners of Northern California for this Rooftop Challenge program is better financing options, easier customer acquisition, and then permitting, inspection, and interconnection best practices. And that's a great segue into my two guest speakers today, who will talk about shining a blind spot on permitting, shining a light on permitting blind spots, from Carla Din, Director of the East Bay Green Corridor, and Nabil Khazarani, Project Analyst also with the East Bay Green Corridor. So Carla and Nabil, if you're ready, I'm ready to pass the baton over to you and let you take off.
Great. Thanks so much, David. And hello, everybody. Thanks so much for joining us today. Before I get into the meat of the matter, or for those vegetarians out there like myself, the soy meat of the matter, I wanted to give you a bit of background on the East Bay Green Corridor, who we are, and why we got involved in solar permitting. Next, please. Next slide, please. Thank you. The East Bay Green Corridor was established in late 2007, then by the four mayors of Oakland, Emeryville, Richmond, and Berkeley, and the director of the Lawrence Berkeley Lab, who is now DOE Energy Secretary Steve Chu, as well as UC Berkeley Chancellor Robert Virgineau. And the principals wanted to leverage the incredible assets the region has to offer to build a thriving clean energy economy. Since then, we've added 5 additional cities, Hayward, San Leandro, Alameda, Albany, and El Cerrito, Cal State East Bay, as well as the Proctor Community Colleges. We have one local municipal utility, Alameda Municipal Power, and the other 8 cities are part of the investor-owned utility, Pacific Gas and Electric. And our cities comprise about 953,000 residents. Next. In late 2010, the principals determined that they should develop a regional standardized solar permitting process. And I feel like we're pioneers in this effort. This did precede the Sunshot Initiative, and I think that the principals were very forward-thinking in terms of looking at the potential benefits that this could bring to the region. It also was the result of some green business roundtables where we heard loudly and clearly from the solar industry that standardization was key to helping their businesses succeed in the region. Next. Here are some of the benefits that we identified as potentially resulting from a streamlined permitting process. We heard from industry that this would remove barriers that they face, having to deal with different permitting processes in each city, reduce costs, help drive the market, bring scale. Obviously, we want to build the economy, which means developing high-quality jobs and putting our trained workforces to work. All of our cities have climate action goals, and this could contribute to those. And we would like to serve as a replicable model that can be used as an example, not only in the rest of the state, but also in the rest of the country. As you all know, it's a hard time for everybody, not just for local governments, but we have seen incredible hits within our cities. One example is one city that lost 50% of its permitting staff. Inspectors of solar permitting installations are having to cover different function areas, for instance, plumbing inspectors inspecting the solar installations. Jurisdictions cannot bypass this process. They are held to state codes, as you all know, have to uphold safety and health issues. And initially when we approached our cities, they wondered, well, why solar permitting only? You know, they deal with multiple types of permits, and why should solar be given special attention? Next slide. The way we embarked on this was through a multi-step process. As you can see, the initial step was just discovery. First, we researched other permitting processes in the country, took an inventory of what exists out there currently within each individual city, and the bill will get into the details of that in a minute. We brought in different players from decision makers. I mentioned the mayors and then their staff, economic development directors, AHJs, permitting officials, planning officials, as well as sustainability coordinators and industry leaders. We did hold industry convening where we got enthusiastic buy-in in terms of moving forward with developing this process. We also have drawn from multiple types of resources, from monetary resources through the Department of Energy Sunshot Initiative, of which we're very grateful, as well as working closely with the Governor's Office of Planning and Research, and the office just released its solar permitting guidelines, as well as the local members of the Green Quarter, which have contributed time and energy and resources towards this effort. The next step was looking at what are the key areas of consistency that we can all agree on possibly implementing in our own cities. I think what's important to keep in mind is that every city acts independently, and it's really natural for them to have different types of permitting processes. So we're not starting from a blank slate. We're starting from actual processes and having to transition those to a standardized one, which takes quite a bit of effort, especially in these difficult budget years. And reaching consensus. This will not only include the city representatives, but also industry, and that's the next step that we'll be moving towards. Guidelines, after meeting with industry, getting their input, we hope to develop a set that all parties, stakeholders will be happy with. And then will come the process of adoption within our cities. Some of the cities may require a different process, whether it's administrative or going to their city councils. And finally, implementation. And we are moving towards a phased-in approach. Because resources are limited, we are going to look at attacking the low-hanging fruit first and then progressing as those resources become available. Next, please. Okay, now I'm going to hand these areas of consistency off to Namil.
Hi, thank you. So to begin with, key areas of consistency, I just want to reiterate that kind of brings to notion inconsistency, which I like us to think about it more as diversity, because diversity is kind of natural when you have a whole bunch of different jurisdictions, right? We have the small, we have the large, and this the differentiation from all of these different areas is a result of being adaptable. But also, if you look at it on a broader scale with contractors, this inconsistency can lead to insecure installers who are uncertain whether they're going to be providing sufficient information, and that can lead to kickbacks. So AHJs are collaborating now on a regional level to mitigate these inconsistencies. And so some of these components attribute to a standardized process. So obviously, code interpretation as is possible to have little variation across AHJs throughout the region. But it's also important to create a steady flow of communication between the contractor community and AHJs. So that means providing online communication or over the phone communication with AHJs. Also that the materials can be submitted online. Although in terms of the materials, the application across the different jurisdictions, it's the same information that's expected from all the different areas. So it's not needed to be changed or anything like that. But we have found that there's a common need for one submittal package. In terms of the permit review process, we're trying to minimize that to about 1 to 2 inspections. Again, taking into account whether the jurisdiction is small or large. In regard to permit fees, we found again with the varying sizes of these jurisdictions that we're either at or below cost recovery. In terms of education and training, this kind of creates a unified interpretation of code. Now, the structural standards, the structural, electrical, fire, and signage standards, for instance, structural standards like live loads and things like that, no one's going to be standing on top of the modules. So those are things that we don't really need to take into account. With electrical standards, a common diagram is being found to help facilitate a more streamlined process. With fire standards, an agreement of taking in or incorporating new technologies like microinverters to have a single disconnect. And signage to have a common template for fonts and colors and things like that. Now, we've convened with our industry partners. Next slide, please. So by convening with our industry partners, we've actually been given a list of several of the extra design features or variations that we have across the different jurisdictions. Now, convening in working groups, we've been able to minimize many of these extra design features. Next. Now, if you see that we've been able to minimize some of the variations, including things such as the structural cross-section that was required before and it was incredibly detailed. Also noting things on the plans that the inverter is integrated but separable, were other things on there. Next slide, please.
Okay, this is just an example of the different perspectives on the problem. We do work closely with industry, as I mentioned, and I think there's the perception that what's getting in the way is red tape, stacks of paperwork, different processes, and it's true that we are trying to streamline and standardize those processes. But there's also the other part of the picture, which is that the AHJs are having to deal with just the wide spectrum of quality standards and what gets submitted to them, and they have no choice but to deal with all of that. What we're trying to do is to address the big picture so that all stakeholders benefit from this and so that it's a much more efficient system for all parties concerned. You can see one of the permitting officials, and actually the consensus is that about 20% of the submittal packages are poorly organized in one fashion or another, and in this case may require 8 to 12 additional hours of doing red lines, or it could just mean a matter of the AHJ waiting for that application to be corrected and resubmitted where it's out of his or her hands. Next slide, please. Some of the findings that we have discovered include, as Nabil mentioned, the variations in the design elements, and we're quickly reducing those to one or two. We found there is a quick turnaround time according to the personnel available. As Nabil mentioned, permit fees have been waived entirely or below cost recovery, and in this budget crunch, cities are finding that they want to at least get back to cost recovery. I shouldn't say at least, but get back to cost recovery. And inspections are impressively done within a very brief window. Over-the-counter is provided as much as possible, provided that all the information is correct, that it's a quality application. And one of our cities, which is small, hopes to move to over-the-counter in the future. And I just want to give an example of use of resources, because one city has taken the initiative of actually having a pre-conference with each installation to minimize the future problems. And you may think that this is an excessive use of resources, but because he has found so many problems down the road, if he didn't have that initial meeting, then it would be a greater waste of time. So you can see that his time would be freed up, resources would be freed up, if there were the assurances that the application would be submitted properly. The final bullet has to do with a lot of mom and pop contractors that are unfamiliar with the process and the requirements, do-it-yourselfers, that could possibly be endangering their lives, as well as inexperienced contractors, such as those from roofing companies that are making the foray into solar for the first time. Next slide.
So where are the holdups? One of the things that we have to keep into account right now is that these jurisdictions, again, have been hit pretty hard. The amount of manpower that exists in the departments right now has been cut enormously. So any type of extra problem or anything like that is just like throwing sand into the engine. It's really going to tie things up for the entire team, the entire industry. And so some of these common problems, something like approved design doesn't match field. So you do an over-the-counter or something like that, and it's approved. They go out to their roof. They realize there's some element that's been changed, so they reconfigure it. They think it's awesome and everything like that, but then the inspector goes out and it doesn't match. The approved design doesn't match the actual field. The disconnect is in the wrong place. Ridge clearance. Module attachments are not per manufacturer's specification. Another one is satellite images don't match the actual condition of the area. So you do a satellite image, you map out the system, all of a sudden you've never actually visited the site, so trees have grown or there's a new skylight in place, and now they've had to just redo the whole system. So again, these are things that can tie up the time. Poor signage, which has been an issue. Do-it-yourself projects are substandard. We remember that in our area we have the Lawrence Berkeley Lab, but lots of people like to go at it themselves. Poorly organized submittal packages have been one of the biggest shortcomings. Assumptions about site conditions are inaccurate. Again, coming back to the satellite images is a good example of that. And contractors don't follow guidelines. Next slide.
So as mentioned before, this can require multiple inspections. We had one of our members talk about an instance where a particular contractor was using the permitting process as kind of on-the-job training, and the application was submitted and resubmitted again, and it required 4 inspections, and I don't believe it ever got resolved. So that really needs to be addressed on the contractor side to really minimize those problems and reduce the turnaround time. Obviously, it adds time, energy, and cost to both parties. I hope we've made that point very clear. This is valuable time to both sides and cost. What we've seen is that this has been a disproportionate finger-pointing to the jurisdictions and has given them a black eye where, I was actually pleasantly surprised to learn that our region didn't fit this picture where we were causing the holdups. Yes, we need to standardize, but I do believe that the staff is turning around things as fast as they can. And we have also heard that this, too, gives industry a bad name. So I don't think that this is good for any of the stakeholder groups, and we really need to work together to look to figure out how we can address this in a collaborative fashion. Next, please. What we've come up with is a set of recommendations for both government and industry that we hope will really alleviate some of these holdups and lead to a very streamlined cooperative process. As I mentioned, we're going to be working with the contractor community to provide our recommended guidelines to them for their input and come back with a mutually agreed upon final document, which will include standards and guidelines, required materials, and so on. We hope this will in turn lead to those standards being integrated into the business practices and that the staff will be well trained. In fact, training is important for both contractors and HJs, which Nabil will mention in a minute. This is not inexpensive to execute. The costs are quite significant. If you look at going electronic, that can lead to millions of dollars of funding required. So this cannot happen overnight. We're going to be looking at low-hanging fruit, getting that checklist online, having an application online, and the next steps would be things like submitting online electronic signatures, electronic payments, and so on. And I threw in peer pressure just because I think that everybody needs to realize that, where applications are submitted that are low quality, it really does give the perception that it's all of one party. So I think we really need to raise the bar for everybody and all hands on deck. And let's see how we can work together to make this succeed. I think this is the only way we can reach the Sunshot Initiative goals of reducing the time and resources involved. And as Nabil mentioned, the design elements, I think we've already addressed that quite easily, in fact. On the HJ side?
Along with the...
previous slide, thanks.
So training for contractors and AHJs. Obviously, we were talking about this diversity before, all this variation across the jurisdictions, just because of the natural circumstance of having varying sizes and circumstances and such. But again, when you have that variation, if you could think of it as just all of us speaking different languages, that can become very difficult. If I'm trying to speak to my friend who's speaking German and I speak French. So training kind of helps create a unified language for contractors and HJs. There's for instance, some, again, HJs have been hit pretty hard economically. Some are doing multiple tasks. Some have a plumbing background but are now doing checking electrical diagrams. Providing training to help facilitate that type of inspection or plan checking can greatly speed up the process. Likewise, training provided to the contractor community and really getting these two parties together in a single room can help create that common language. Yes, we have an organized submittal package. These are common problems, and prepare the AHJs to to expedite their process.
Next. So in closing, we wanted to leave with the notion of collaboration, not only with our contract community, but also in terms of other regional collaborations and partnerships that are also Department of Energy Sunshot grantees. The Green Corridor is working closely with two others in different counties to see whether we can come up with an even larger region for a similar expedited permitting process. Right now, we're working with Solar Sonoma County as well as a group in Contra Costa County, which covers or will cover about a 30 AHJ region. And we're looking at also providing uniform training, looking at the issue of streamlining for interconnection as well. That's definitely the third stool of this picture. And can we create the same thing for a commercial solar permitting process? We're sharing best practices, and one of those is in terms of implementation. How are we working with our HJs to get to the point where we all want to go? And the data collection is going to be absolutely instrumental after this has been in place for a year or two, collecting the data, looking at whether or not this effort has led to a reduced time frame. And then from there, scaling up. I think right now we have great potential to spread this to a 9-county region in Northern California, and we hope to do so. Next slide. So both Nabil and I very much appreciate your attention to this issue. We hope it's been informative, and we welcome your questions. Thank you. David?
Well, thank you, Carla and Nabil. That was very informative and hopefully of value to our audience. And hopefully our audience now is maybe entering some questions into the chat line. But before I take any of the audience questions, I have a few questions of my own. So this sort of begins the Q&A discussion portion of our presentation today. So Carla and Nabil, if you're ready, I've got a couple things I'd like to start off the discussion with. So first of all, I'm sure there are costs associated with the standardization, such as software. Can you lay out some of those items and what they are and what the costs might be?
Sure, thanks, David. We have surveyed our cities about that question, and it really is quite a range. One of the cities estimated about $300,000 to create a standardized permitting system completely. That includes such costs as software configuration and implementation. That's about $115,000. Transferring legacy data is another $15,000. There's mobile devices for inspectors, another $10,000. Training at $15,000. Technical assistance and maintenance at $20,000. So as you can see, it's a very expensive effort. Other cities have different figures just to achieve online permitting, including submittals and payment, for instance, for one particular city is about $60,000. So as you might imagine in this fiscal crisis, I think there's a lot of competition for resources, and we really do need the help of all stakeholder groups to really support our efforts to bring more resources to this effort. For instance, Congress is going to be taking up whether or not to reallocate year 3 of the Sunshot Initiative, and everyone's support is needed there.
And on the training comment that you and Nabil have made several times, this might be a good opportunity to talk about. You're also involved in the Solar 3.0 program, which will be rolling out the PVOT, the online training developed by UL and the Interstate Renewable Energy Council. I wonder if you might want to comment on that a bit, either Carla or Nabil.
David, can you, I'm not really sure what you're asking. We are working with other partners such as Solar Sonoma County that does put on training programs, such as there was a recent one on microinverters. There's been some on inspections. Is that the type of thing you had in mind?
Well, there's a lot of support coming down from a national level that we will be able to pioneer at a regional level to support some of these training needs that you and Nabil have outlined. And as part of the Solar 3.0 program, we'll be able to roll that out in the East Bay and Solar Sonoma County in the very near future to help inspectors as well as installers, get a better handle on what some of the issues and the code changes are with regards to solar PV.
Right, and in California, the state is quite active in terms of integrating code updates pertaining to solar in the next round. I also want to mention that what we hope to do is to work with our community to train them specifically on what our guidelines are so that everybody understands, the HJs, the contractor community. Since there has been that buy-in or will be that buy-in up front, I think once we all have that common understanding, then we really will not expect to see so many problems, and there will be that commitment all around.
And on the topic of buy-in, I believe there are 9 jurisdictions within the East Bay Green Corridor. And how do you bring everybody together and convene them to be able to collaborate and solve a common goal across the whole industry?
Thanks, David. One of the things that we've been doing that we've found successful is to convene in working groups. So we've been getting all of our jurisdictions together to talk about these common issues, develop key areas of consistency, and kind of work together to draft the submittal packages and start to formulate an expedited permitted process. We also invite industry partners to give input, and soon we'll be convening with our contractor community as well.
And we should mention the need to bring in interconnection. We're working with our local utility on that front, Alameda Municipal Power, and we're seeing a lot of parallels in terms of the issues involved in streamlining. I also wanted to commend Bill because he's done a great job of reaching out to individuals within our group. We do have 9 members. Some of those members have expertise in specific areas, especially the technical areas. So I think it's important to find that expertise and to help the AHJs find the time to work with us. We have a fantastic group. We're very blessed in that regard, so it makes it easy for us.
So what kind of hurdles have you seen in moving forward? I mean, what kind of things do you see that are going to be either impediments that you've been able to resolve or impediments in the future in being able to achieve your objectives?
I think that it's really been a matter of availability. It's hard to bring people from 9 jurisdictions together. Everybody knows how difficult it is to schedule a meeting, and that's so true now, especially when people are doubling up on jobs. So I would have to say that's the #1 biggest challenge. Down the road, implementation is going to be dependent on that follow-through of the commitment on both sides, as well as resources available to get to the next level.
Thank you. Thank you. And then what about solar ABCs, the expedited permitting process? Has that been something that these 9 jurisdictions have looked at and considered adoption as part of this overall process? Or where do you see everybody standing on that particular issue?
So as stated before, we did take a look at several different expedited processes. One of the nice things that we've seen, because we've been also collaborating on a regional level, is that the basis of what the solar ABCs is or tries to do is create this basic solar scenario, which is kind of, it captures the common scenario, the common system, that 10 kilowatt system that's on this perfect roof and really doesn't need much thought to go through. So essentially what we've been doing, it's an 80% of these projects kind of fall into that. And so I can pretty much speak for all of the different, all of our collaborators that we're looking to capitalize on this 80% and create that expedited permit based off of that. What is this scenario, this prescriptive process?
Thank you. Thank you. I want to return to the topic of cost recovery. You mentioned it several times in your presentation, and it's usually kind of a hot topic is, what is the permitting fee versus what we're talking about today is what is the underlying hidden cost that everybody's incurring going back and forth and reviewing and re-reviewing and re-inspections and, and whether it's too much paperwork or not enough paperwork, and some of the work that was done last year by Sunrun indicated that the hidden soft costs were over 50 cents a watt, which is significantly over $1,000 for a typical 5,000 watt residential system. The work that SolarTech was doing with NREL also last year came up with a number closer to 15 cents a watt, which would be in the $750 range for a typical residential system. So obviously the hidden costs are significantly more than what a typical permit fee might be in the $200–300 range. So I'm wondering if you might want to comment on that and how this may or may not impact the jurisdictions, how they're able to actually have adequate resources or to support the installer base.
Well, I think the cost recovery amount that the jurisdictions come up with have to do with that 80% that Bill talked about. It's with that assumption of the labor involved in the average system inspection, permitting process, and so on. Unfortunately, that doesn't cover the 20%, and so the costs are really much higher than what they set their fee at. So I think that that's another reason why we have to help streamline the process to make sure that the cities are getting reimbursed at a level that really covers all of their time and effort.
So it becomes a net benefit to all parties involved to streamline. And then also I'm wondering if you would comment that when we're talking about streamlining, we're not talking about shortchanging safety or any other code requirements that cities are obligated to enforce. And I know you mentioned that earlier in your presentation. I wonder if you might want to go into a little bit more detail right now.
Absolutely. I mean, obviously there's state code that cover safety and health. There's no intention on bypassing any of that. And it actually has surprised me that some efforts are looking at removing the inspection entirely. I don't see how that would benefit any member of the effort to increase penetration of solar, because as everybody knows, all you need is one bad incident to give a black eye to the industry, one fire, and we absolutely do not want that to occur.
I think Wade Crawford said it best. He's the director over at the Office of Planning and Research. He said, "Don't throw the baby out with the water." And I think that's what we're trying to do right here, is not to uphold the safety standards while creating this standardized process, which is just, if you think of it in these terms, standardization is just trying to create a common language, right? You go in, you know what you're going to expect. The expediting is one of the fruits of this as well, but then it makes the whole process a lot quicker.
Very well stated. Thank you. I think SolarTech is definitely a supporter of, we want streamlining, but we also want to maintain safety, because as you said, Carla, it only takes one bad fire or accident to give the whole industry a black eye and set us back, several quarters, months, decades, whatever it turns out to be. You also talked a little bit about online permitting. I'm wondering if you could go into a little bit more detail about some of the other investigative efforts that you've done with what kind of online permitting tools might be out there, and what a time frame might be to finally move this into an online world, like so many of the other things that we enjoy in our daily life that we can just go to the internet and log on and find out information about.
Sure, there are, as you know, a lot of technological innovations in solar, and that doesn't stop at the software level in terms of permitting software. And we have been introduced to some pretty exciting electronic software. In this case, it's from a young company called ePlanCheck, and they do have a pretty exciting applications for permitting that could help, for instance, with things like simultaneous departments making comments at the same time, being able to track the most recent versions, ensuring that the versions from the PlanCheck side is the same one as the inspector in the field. Having that ability, the interactive ability to work with a permit. We're looking for pilot sites for that and other software applications. We also know that some cities are moving to a much larger transition of going electronic with their entire permitting department, and there are about 60 companies out there that handle that level. There's actually an approach that incorporates both of those modules. It's called eFacilis, and I'm not speaking to promote any one in particular, but these are ones that I'm familiar with.
Okay, thank you. This is the point in the program where I'm kind of getting a high sign from Wendy here that we have a lot of online questions on our chat line. So I'm going to turn the microphone over, so to speak, to Wendy Boyle, Director of Operations at SolarTech, to read off some of the online chat questions, and either you, Nabil, or Carla can take them as you see them.
Great, thank you, David. And we'll try to address all the questions that have come in, time permitting, no pun intended, for those of you who have been patiently waiting to ask your question. So the question is, Carla, this is probably for you or either Nabil, as David had mentioned. Is there a standardized ordinance that the member cities of the Green Corridor use or are developing from the perspective of a planning department? This particular individual says that they are considering developing and adopting a broad scope renewable energy ordinance that could benefit from these principles. So is there anything in the works in the Green Corridor along these lines?
We don't believe that we will need an ordinance. We don't anticipate any code changes. this transition may actually not have to go through City Council, or it may for some cities. It depends on their requirements. But I do know that there are efforts underway. I think that SolarCity is one company that was considering designing an ordinance, but at this point we don't believe it's required for us.
The next question that has come in, and bear with me for a moment because my mouse is acting up. On the findings slide, the slide said that inspections are being done within 2-hour window or a day of over-the-counter medium or large cities. This seems to be addressing both field inspections and approval of the permit package. Could you provide, a little bit more clarification on what does that actually mean?
Yeah, sorry, I think there was a little bit of running maybe on those two items. Over-the-counter is executed for some cities, but that will still require an inspection, and we've found that inspections occur either day of or within a 24-hour window.
Okay, great. Thank you. Can you provide or name one or two cities that you've looked at, meaning East Bay Green Corridor has looked at, that has a good model process for PV permits?
I'm sorry, what kind of model, Wendy?
A good model for PV permits.
What is a good example?
We don't like to play favorites. What we're doing is we're taking the strengths of a number of them and putting, combining them into one. I know that I'm sidestepping the answer, but really I think, for instance, Berkeley has a process where they've developed conditions of approval since they've, after gaining some experience in solar, they learned what the most common problems are that they face when certain applications are submitted. So they developed an 11 by 14 sheet that includes about 8 different problem areas. They check it off and return it with the expectation that that problem will be resolved and get resubmitted according to the specifications on that sheet. There are other cities that are a little bit more advanced in terms of online information, so we're looking to those. It really does vary across the board, but again, it's going to be a combined approach.
And the other thing to take into account is just, again, the size of the jurisdiction. Something that's going to work out for a very small area might not work for a very large one, or vice versa.
Right. For instance, the smaller city may not have the staffing at the counter all the time to provide the over-the-counter services.
Got it. Thank you very much. More in lines of the permitting fees, and more specifically when you had mentioned a few times of for submittal packages and so forth. During your discussions with the various AHJs, have there been any talks about, increasing the cost to the installer or having a reinspection fee or a resubmittal fee that would help to minimize or gain the cost recovery that's being lost because of the re-inspections and re-inspections and resubmittals and resubmittals?
Yes, in fact, we are considering different models. One of our partner cities has instituted the extra charge for the second inspection. It's the stick approach, and it's something we're considering right now. In fact, we're open to suggestions, so please feel free to email us if anybody out there does have some ideas.
Great, thank you, Carla. David, actually, this question is for you. A couple years ago, SolarTech developed an interoperability standard to combine permitting and interconnection within an online environment. Excuse me, this question got cut off. What would it take to pilot this on a small scale? What would the benefits? What are the benefits that would be obvious to the jurisdiction and the industries if they were to implement and adopt this standard?
Well, the main benefit to the jurisdictions, or actually to let's just say the industry in general, was a common data definition. So yeah, data. Carla mentioned, for example, earlier collecting data on, what would be the improvement of these. We talk about streamlining, but at the end of the day, if we do something to make a change, do we know if it made any difference? What's the cycle time? What are the holdups? What are the bottlenecks? Very similar in the diagram that Nabil had earlier. So the main thing was to be able to look at the different timestamps along the way and collect that data, as well as having a streamlined interface on the front end to assist the installer in permitting submittal. We're so used to going to Amazon.com and ordering a book, and then you go to Barnes & Noble, and their website is almost identical to Amazon.com. You don't have to relearn a new website. Everything is all fairly streamlined and straightforward and almost, idiot-proof. So, that was our hope to be able to do with that. Now, what would it take? We're still looking for vendors or partners who might be able to pilot something like that. As you can probably imagine, these things don't come cheap, and so it did take several $100,000 to be able to put together a pilot and to be able to work with a couple of software companies out there to start the deployment and the adoption. The idea at the end of the day was that we didn't want to control the industry. We wanted just to create a standard that allowed different software players in the industry to participate in the industry, to sell their services, sell their technology to the jurisdictions, but at the end of the day be able to download that data and take a look at it and cross-correlate with other jurisdictions, cities, and operations across the nation. So that's kind of where that was our vision, and that's where we are today.
Great. Thank you, David. And actually, the last question that I see from the audience is for me, and I'm sure all of you are wondering if the presentation and a copy of this, and is this session being recorded, will be made available. Yes, we are recording this session, and yes, a copy of the presentation and the recording will be made available sometime soon after this session. What SolarTech normally does is we will review the recording to make sure that the quality of the audio is good. If it's not good, then unfortunately we will not post it or send it out. And most people, those who would like a copy of the recording, can get in touch with me directly, Wendy Boyle, Director of Operations with SolarTech. My email address is wboyle@solartech.org. And what we'll also do is we'll take the Q&A that we've addressed today, we'll include that in the presentation, and we'll send it out to everyone who has attended, as well as everyone who registered and was unable to attend due to various scheduled conflicts and so forth. So that will be made available to everyone.
Okay.
And with that, David, I'm going to pass it back over to you.
Thank you. I have just one more question before we close off today, Carla and Nabil. We've talked about a lot of different things and a lot of different activities. I'm wondering if you can give the audience a framework of what is the timeline, what is the schedule that we're looking at here. At the end of the conversation, when will all of this become real? What are your thoughts on that?
Sure. Green Quarter is on the path to finalizing our guidelines this summer. As I mentioned, we're going to have a convening with our industry partners, followed by an adoption period within the cities, and then we hope to begin implementation by the end of the year.
Great, great. Well, I think we just have just a few minutes left here. Again, I want to thank everybody who is on the call today for taking time out to hear from the East Bay Green Corridor and the great work that they're doing to streamline permitting. Again, you can see the contact information on the screen here for Carla Den, Director at East Bay Green Corridor, and Nabil Kazarani, the Program Analyst, also with East Bay Green Corridor, our honored guest speakers today on streamlining permitting in the East Bay Green Corridor. So just to kind of wrap up a few announcements, and then we will let you all go back to your other day jobs. This is part of a webinar series that we are conducting as part of our Rooftop Solar Challenge grant. We have another one coming up on August 8th, which will be an update from the San Francisco Department of Environment. They've been doing some great work. They're a partner of ours along with Solar Sonoma County and East Bay Green Corridor. We'll also get an update from Clean Coalition on August 22nd. They're working more on the interconnection side, developing recommended best practices for interconnection and what they're calling a Rule 21 Lite, applicable for munis and other small utility operations. And then we'll hear again from Solar Sonoma County on September 5th, and then we'll be back on September 19th with an update from the East Bay Green Corridor. So lots going on over the next couple of months as we continue to roll out and streamline the finance, permitting, interconnection, and other hidden costs in the solar delivery process. Again, as we mentioned at the top of the hour, this is due in part to a grant from the Department of Energy, Sunshot Program, and we're very appreciative to the leadership and wisdom of the Department of Energy in putting forth these grants to allow organizations such as SolarTech to be able to serve the industry better. Coming up very shortly, this Friday will be our first installment of another webinar series that we'll be doing, sponsored by Trina Solar. Trina Solar is a long-standing member of SolarTech. We're very proud to be working with Trina Solar to put together this webinar series, which we'll kick off this Friday. On the workforce topic, how to uncover the next generation of solar leaders, taking a page from industry and rethinking the training paradigm. So this will be presented Friday at 9:30 Pacific time. I hope to see you all then there. And you can see the URL at the bottom if you'd like to register for this event. With that, Wendy, I think that concludes our time today, and I'd like to turn it back over to you to wrap up, and I will leave the Trina Solar slide up on the screen.
Thank you, David. And again, I'd like to echo what David said. Thank you. Thanks to our speakers today, Carla Dinn and Nabil from East Bay Green Corridor, as well as their partnership and hard work that they're doing in helping the team move reduce the barriers within their jurisdiction as well as within the industry, moving it forward. Also like to thank all of you who joined us today. We hope that the information that was provided was informative. And if you're interested in getting involved, we'd love to hear from you. Please contact David McFeely at dmcfeely@solartech.org. And again, I'd like to echo, very much appreciate the leadership and honor that the U.S. Department of Energy Sunshot Initiative has bestowed on SolarTech in awarding us this grant so we can move forward in helping the industry. Wish you all a great day, and that concludes our session. Thank you.
Thank you, everybody. Bye-bye.